Yeah, they want to say it's their law. Yeah.
5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10,
Better sit down.
11, you have a quorum.
And if you're in a meeting, if it's not to back, if somebody mind closing the door, it does get loud in here. Sometimes it's hard to communicate. It's usually quiet, but once in a while it gets loud. So, that's it.
I'd like to take this, it's now 6:04 p.m. on October 1st, 2025, and I'd like to open the meeting. Samantha, will you please take roll call, please?
Yes, Chair, Blackstock South, Chris Bissonette. Bryce Canyon North, John Hike. Cabrillo, Rainey Steffen. Carriage Square, Vilma Contreras. Channel Islands, Tom McNally. Cypress, Noemi Corpus. East Village, Ronald Arwejo. Five Points, Pat Brown. Fremont South, Kim Winch. Hobson Park East, Roger Poirier. Kamala Park, Robert Lucio. Lemonwood, Larry Stein. Orchard Park, Diana Velzy.
Here.
Oxnard Dunes, Lisa Hewitt. Oxnard Shores, Walt Hagedom. Pleasant Valley Estates, Rosanna Biggerstaff. Redwood, Patrick Harlan. Rio Lindo, Sandy Diaz. River Park, Paul Schneblin. Rose Park, Alfonso Arroyo. Seaview Estates, Isaac Califf. Sierra Linda, Sergio Garcia. South Bank, Deb Aravalo. Southwind, Sofia Vega. Via Marina, Doug Tauber. West Village, Michael Gleason. Wilson, Angela Whitecomb. Windsor North, Brian Landers. Chair, we have a quorum.
Thank you, Samantha. Before we go into the Pledge of Allegiance, I want to take a moment to honor the memory of our dear friend and colleague, Lynn Schulman, who passed away on Saturday, September 27th. Lynn moved to Oxnard in the 1970s or early 80s from the San Fernando Valley, where he had worked in the studios in lighting and photography. He brought with him not only technical skill, but a creative spirit, a generous heart, and a deep love for community. Many may not know this, but Lynn was also a talented woodworker, a quiet craft that reflected his patience and eye for detail. He served as a chair of his neighborhood, Carriage Square, for 28 years and was a dedicated leader within INCO, having been involved from its earliest days when it was known as INCC and INCF. He also served as INCO chair and other various seats throughout the years, always focused on civic engagement and improving the city he loved. Lynn contributed greatly to Oxnard's cultural life. He served on the boards of the Carriage Art Museum and the Performing Arts Center and produced numerous videos for the city and INCO, including informative pieces like the one on the 311 app. He brought his trademark care, professionalism, and style to everything he did, always looking sharp in one of his signature cowboy shirts. Lynn will be remembered for his kindness, dedication, and tireless commitment to his community. His absence leaves a deep void, but his impact and spirit will remain with us. We send our heartfelt love and condolences to his wife, Alfie, and to his two children, his son, Michael, and daughter, Ilana. May they find comfort in knowing how deeply he was appreciated and how greatly he will be missed. After the Pledge of Allegiance, let's please take a moment of silence in commemoration of our dear friend, Lynn Schulman.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, item B, approval of minutes. Minutes of the hearing from September 3rd, 2003. Recommendations to approve. Please review your minutes of hearing from September 3rd.
I'd like to make a motion to approve.
Do I hear a second? We have a motion to approve by Chris Bissonette, seconded by Roger Poirier. Everybody in favor of approving minutes as written, please say aye. Anybody in disagreement? Nope. Okay, so with that, minutes of September 3rd, 2025 has been approved as written. Okay, the floor opens to public comments. At this time, a person may address the INCO on matters within the subject matter jurisdiction of the INCO. The INCO cannot enter into detailed discussion or take any action on any items presented during public comments. At this time, such items may only be referred to the Executive Secretary for administrative action or scheduled at a subsequent agenda for discussion. Public comments on items on the agenda will be considered at the time of consideration of the agenda item. The presiding officer shall limit public comments to 3 minutes. Go ahead, Roger.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Roger Poirier from Hobson Park East. I really appreciated the minutes. I thought they were very well written and complete. Your comments about Len Schulman were beautifully written and very well expressed. I very much appreciated that you told so much of the story about Len. When I first moved to Oxnard in 2013, came to an INCO meeting, Len was sitting up there on the dais. The chair was Joe Avalar, who's also passed on. Other chairs since Joe have been Julie Pena, and then Len Schulman, and then Jack Villa, and then Jackie Tedeschi, and then Jack Villa again, and now Diana Vilza. But Len was really one of a kind, a giant of civic engagement and participation in all things Oxnard. He was the nicest guy, gentleman, and he just was there all the time. He came to everything, and I'm proud. I considered him a friend, and I hope he considered me one, because I really miss him. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, Jack.
Hello, Executive Board. Nice to see you. I haven't seen you in a while. My name is Jack Villa, for those who don't know me. I'm a former chair of the Hobson Park East and a former chair of the INCO and other chairs. So I am currently totally retired now, but I made this special trip to come and speak of Len Schulman. I don't know if some of these folks knew Len, but I had the lucky time in my life to have Lynn, when he was a chair, he put many years on the executive board, and when I joined the executive board, he was always supportive of all the neighborhoods and the executive board and even the individuals in the executive board. So he was always supportive of me when I was running my neighborhood, and he was an individual that you kind of wish that everybody had those traits, and I wish, you know, his work will carry on with some of you here in your support also of all the neighborhoods and the chairs. And it's always a good feeling to know that you have other chairs supporting your neighborhood. So, yeah, I'd just like to thank Lynn and his family and send my condolences to the family. And we'll miss him. So, thank you.
Thank you, Jack. Madam Chair, do we have anybody online? Or Secretary, sorry, Madam Secretary. Okay. Okay, is there anybody else for public comments? No? Okay. So let's move on to the business at large now. Subject 1, Brown Act training. That the INCO general membership receive a Brown Act training from Assistant City Attorney Jason Zaragoza, followed by Q&A. Oh, before, is there anybody online that wants to make public comments before the presentation?
There is no one online.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, John.
Okay, I'll wait for them to queue up the PowerPoint.
Oh, well, that would work.
Diego. All right, good evening, Chair, members of the INCO, Assistant City Attorney Jason Zaragoza. So I'll be presenting on the Brown Act. Some of you may have heard some version of this before, Roger, and you probably have as well, some of you up there as well, but this is kind of a refresher. Obviously, if you have questions as I proceed through the presentation, feel free to ask. Or you can wait until the end, or if you have no questions, that's fine too. But this is meant to be sort of an overview of the Brown Act. There are various nuances that might apply, and there are various cases pertaining to various sections of the Brown Act. But again, this is meant to be an overview. But if you have specific questions, feel free to ask. Okay. So in 1951, there was a reporter with the San Francisco Chronicle named Mike Harris, did a 6-part series called Your Secret Government, and he found basically that local governing bodies were conducting business sort of behind the scenes, weren't doing it open in public, right? And so eventually that led to legislation, which we now know as the Brown Act. If we can keep this in mind as we go through the presentation, this is sort of the heart of the Brown Act. And it's that very last sentence there, right? It is the intent of the law that their actions, meaning those of a legislative body, be conducted openly. Okay, so anytime that we think of the Brown Act, we just think of it as an open meetings law and err on the side of caution with regard to the conduct of your business as a legislative body. Certainly there are exceptions to that. You'll see the council go into closed session and we'll go over those exemptions as well. Those typically don't apply to you all at the INCO level, but still it's important to know. Okay. So the Brown Act applies to meetings of legislative bodies. So we'll go through what a meeting is and what a legislative body is first to kind of lay the foundation for what we're talking about here. So this is a governing body, new elected members, appointed bodies, standing committees, and then certain private organizations. We're not going to get into too many details on that. But suffice it to say, you all, as the INCO, are considered a legislative body of the city that is subject to the Brown Act. And so these rules do apply to you. This, just also of note, does not apply to temporary advisory committees that are composed of less than a quorum, serve a limited purpose, limited duration, they're not perpetual, Once their purpose is complete, they're dissolved. Those are ad hoc or advisory committees that are not subject to the Brown Act, right? Versus standing committees, which are subject to the Brown Act. So the best example that we can give at our local level are the various committees of the City Council. So the City Council is a legislative body. They have created the Finance and Governance Committee, the Public Works and Transportation Committee, and then that kind of catch-all committee. So those three are considered standing committees of that legislative body, which is why they are open and public, subject to the Brown Act, agendized, public comment, the whole 9 yards. Okay? Whereas an ad hoc committee, where it consists of less than a quorum. So an ad hoc committee would be like a committee that's set up to establish whether or not you should have, you know, the hours at our local parks should be extended or something like that. You go out, you do your research, you come back with the recommendation, you make your recommendation, boom, you're done, you're dissolved. Okay, so those committees would not be subject to the Brown Act, meaning you can meet on a Saturday, you can meet at a Starbucks, you can meet at a park and conduct your business, come back, report to the committee, the full committee or legislative body, and you're done. Okay, so a meeting, that is any congregation of a majority of members of the legislative body at the same time and place to hear, deliberate, or discuss or deliberate upon an item within the subject matter jurisdiction of the legislative body. So that's a mouthful, but it's essentially any time that you have more than a quorum of the legislative body that's discussing items of business within your subject matter jurisdiction. That should not happen unless it's open and public. Now, if a quorum of you are, and there are exceptions to that, but if a quorum of you are meeting to discuss a football game or something, that's different. You can do that. It doesn't mean that you can't talk to each other. But if you're discussing something that's within your subject matter jurisdiction, that has to be done open and public. So for you all, a quorum is 11, right? Per your bylaws. For the council, a 7-member council, a quorum is 4. So if 4 of them wanted to discuss some project approval, they couldn't do that, right? Now, again, there are exceptions to that where they can be at the same place at the same time, as long as they're not discussing their city business, they're fine. But just remember the rule that if there's a quorum of you, you can't be discussing or deliberating things that are within your subject matter jurisdiction. Okay, so here's exceptions, individual contacts. So certainly you can meet with individual constituents, talk about things. There are certain conferences that you can attend, a quorum can attend without violating the Brown Act. There are community meetings, meetings of other legislative bodies, i.e. Attending a council meeting, something like that, that's totally fine. If you are going to a social or ceremonial event, right? If you all have a friend in common and you're going to that person's wedding or something, you can do that. You don't have to say, nope, sorry, we're all on the same legislative body. We can't attend your wedding. That would be ridiculous. So you can do that. However, even if you're at the same place, we generally would advise you to sit apart or sit in groups to avoid the perception that you're discussing something within your subject matter jurisdiction. What is a serial meeting? Okay, so I don't know if you all, because I typically don't send out emails to you all, but the chair, you may know that whenever, typically when we email members of a legislative body, you're blind copied, right? And that is because we want you to avoid you accidentally responding reply all or something. And now you're all on the same email chain, potentially discussing an item of business. This typically doesn't apply to communications with the INCO, because like I said, we usually don't blind copy you all on communications. But for example, like when if I'm emailing the council, everybody on that list will be blind copied. And again, it's to avoid a serial meeting where you accidentally discuss an item within your subject matter jurisdiction, because now you are, it doesn't have to be that you're discussing something in person. You can also be doing it electronically, and that would potentially be a Brown Act violation. So here's how it works. So if Vice Chair Arroyo contacts Chair Velzy, and then Chair Velzy contacts Hewitt, and so on, that can be a daisy chain way to, you're not all at the same place maybe, meeting to discuss something, but through this series of communication, you're getting a collective concurrence. That is also a violation of the Brown Act, right? You can't circumvent the Brown Act by saying, well, we're not all at the same place discussing this, all I did was talk to one member, then another, then another, then another, and we all agreed to approve this project or whatever. You can't do that. The other way it happens is where you have just one bad actor, right? So Chair Velzy decides, I don't like the Brown Act, so I'm going to contact you, and then you, and then you, and then you individually, and get the answer that I want, right? You can't do that either. So that's called the hub and spoke method of violating the Brown Act. So you don't necessarily have to be at the same place discussing this stuff. It could be through a series of communications where you've now got collective concurrence or discussed an item of consideration through this series of communications. You're not allowed to do that. And then this is the classic email example, right? Like, if we were updating the council on an item that's coming up on their agenda, and we were just providing them with an update, and we didn't blind copy them, and one member responds with, I agree, and then another member, I concur, or another, good idea, now you're getting a collective concurrence in an email, right? And that's not allowed either. So this one is interesting, and some of you may know about this, some of you may not. I think this is written by people that don't understand how social media works, but it is there. 54952.2B3A of the government code now states that if you are a member of the same legislative body, you cannot directly respond to any communication on a social media site. So the classic example that they give is, say a council member posts about some project, a construction project or something on Facebook, and they say, this would be a great project for our neighborhood. You know, if you agree, come out to council and make your voices heard or something. And then another council member responds with a thumbs up or responds in the comment with, yeah, I like this project too. Under that code section, that would potentially be a Brown Act violation. Now, if that same council member posted, hey, go Dodgers, you know, and then somebody else responds, no, I like the Padres or whatever, right? Or they start talking smack. That's not something within their subject matter jurisdiction. So who cares? They can talk about that all day. But this is out there. That would include a thumbs up. That would include an angry face. That would include a text response or whatever. If it's within the subject matter jurisdiction, you're potentially violating the Brown Act by responding to another member of your legislative body on social media. I think it's a ridiculous rule. I think it should be a majority, but that's the law. Okay, additional requirements. So the Brown Act requires that all of your regular meetings and special meetings apply within the territorial boundaries of our jurisdiction, right, within Oxnard, basically. But there are teleconference meetings that are permitted under the Brown Act, and there are special rules that apply to that. And you got a little bit of a flavor for that during COVID, right, when we allowed for virtual attendance and stuff like that. So we'll go over those rules as well. And you cannot read that, and neither can I. So I'll just talk about it. So the traditional Brown Act rule was you can basically like phone in or even Zoom in as long as you have noticed your location and at least a quorum of the legislative body are actually in the jurisdiction and in person. So the classic example I always give is Councilmember Perello years ago participating in a meeting from the Democratic National Convention where he had to post a notice of the meeting on his hotel room and allow members of the public to participate in the meeting that way if they so chose. So you have to post notice at the location that you're at, and you have to allow the public to participate from that location. Kind of ridiculous, but that's the old rule. During COVID, AB 361 on an emergency basis was passed, where during a state of emergency, you could participate virtually as long as it was noticed, and there were certain rules that applied. You had to basically make you couldn't have the meeting, shut off in the middle of it. If there was an interruption, you had to pause the meeting, et cetera. So that was another COVID rule. Now we're operating under another option where for a just cause or an emergency circumstance, you can participate virtually, but you're limited in the number of times that you can do that. So for you all, based on the number of meetings you have, it's 2 times per year. And just cause is like an illness, you're away on business of the legislative body or whatever, or if you have an emergency, so a health and safety reason, right? And you still want to participate in the meeting, but you've got some emergency to attend to, you can attend virtually. But you've got to, my suggestion would be to let Samantha know right away so there can be accommodations made. And you have to remember the limitations that you can't do it over and over and over. You're limited to 2 per year. All right. So and there are certain things, like certain other requirements that have to be made. If there's somebody in the room with you that's over 18 years of age, you have to state their name and their relationship to you, and you have to ensure that your camera is on basically at all times. Okay, so let's go over the agenda posting requirements. Many of you are familiar with these. So the traditional Brown Act requirement is an agenda of your meeting has to be posted 72 hours in advance of a meeting, right? 3 days. For a special meeting, it's 24 hours in advance of a meeting. And then you have these other quirky rules for emergency meetings, adjourned meetings, et cetera, which you typically don't deal with. So if you just remember the 72-hour period and 24-hour period for special meetings, you're generally okay. But recall that the city has a sunshine ordinance. So when the city manager came on board, he wanted to provide additional notice to members of the public. So for city council meetings, regular meetings, those are posted 12 days in advance of a meeting. That is not a Brown Act requirement. The Brown Act, as we say, is a floor, not a ceiling. So you can go above and beyond, which we do. So we post our council meeting agendas 12 days in advance of a meeting. For all other legislative bodies, 7 days. So that's you all. That's why your agenda items are posted 7 days before a meeting, whereas the Brown Act only requires 3 days in advance of a meeting. So sometimes that's difficult for staff to manage, but great for the public, right? You get more opportunity to review agenda items. They're posted ahead of the meeting for a longer period of time. So theoretically, you have more time to review these voluminous packets and things like that. Okay, so an agenda item has to include a brief description of each item being discussed, and you cannot take action or discuss items that are not on your agenda, right? So this is also difficult, I think, at times for the public to understand. Like they may get up in public comment and for their 3 minutes make a very impassioned speech, something that others may even agree is worthy of discussion, but because it's not an agendized item, you may hear a member of the council say, "Thank you," and they move on, right? That's not because they don't want to talk about it, or they may say, "Hey, talk to the fire chief or the police chief or the community development director will talk to you about that more, or city manager," or whatever. And that's because they legally cannot enter into a detailed discussion. So some members of the public may want to know, like, "Hey, Chair Velsley, why aren't you responding to me? Why can't we have this back and forth dialogue?" You can't do it. It's not agendized, right? So recall that at the heart of the Brown Act is that we conduct our business openly, right? So if I'm sitting at home, and again, this is more in the council context, but if I come up and start talking about how there's a bunch of potholes in my neighborhood or whatever, and I want the council to do something about it, the council member might agree with me, but they can't go back and forth having a detailed discussion because theoretically, there may be other members at home who might want to discuss this topic, but they didn't know that it was up for discussion because it's not agendized, right? So that's the theory behind it, basically, is like, if it's not on the agenda, you can't talk about it, right? You can't have a detailed discussion. You might be able to briefly discuss it, but you can't have a detailed back and forth. Okay, so I got ahead of myself. So you can briefly respond to questions or comments. You can ask for clarification, you can make brief announcements, things like that. You can provide factual information. You can ask for an item to be placed on a future agenda. But again, you couldn't then have a back and forth discussion on all these issues pertaining to potholes in a specific neighborhood or whatever, because it's not an agendized item. And we have received complaints from certain members of the public to the District Attorney's Public Integrity Division in the past about elongated discussions that city councils in the past have had regarding very important but not agendized items. And in those circumstances, they're basically warning letters that we've received saying, "Hey, that discussion went on for 7 minutes. That's a little long. Maybe if it was a 2-minute discussion where you're then asking for a future agenda item to be posted, that might be okay. But there's no hard and fast rule, but basically you can't enter into a detailed discussion." Okay. The public has a right to speak on any item on the agenda, which is why you state public comments on items not on the agenda. Then you got my agenda item, right? So the public can call in and make a comment on this agenda item, and so forth. So any item that's posted on the agenda, the public has the right to weigh in on. typically you can really only hear comments about things that are within your subject matter jurisdiction. So if somebody, for example, were to come, and it's a little different for the INCO because arguably there's a lot of stuff within your subject matter jurisdiction. It all pertains to our neighborhoods and stuff. And so, that line isn't so clear with you all. But like, let's say that somebody goes to the Parks and Rec Commission, and they start going on and on about various mural projects or art projects or something. The appropriate commission for that is probably the Arts Commission, right? So you can let it slide and let them make their comment, but typically that should go to a different commission because that's not within the subject matter jurisdiction of that particular legislative body. And then the legislative body can impose reasonable limits on public testimony. So during the Flynn era, for example, you might have seen Mayor Flynn back in the day be like, hey, we have 70 speakers. You hear that beeping too? That's okay. We have to power through it. If you had like 70 speakers, he might be like, I'm going to limit public comment to 1.5 minutes on this particular, for public comment, because you can reasonably impose limits on public testimony. However, we have Measure M that was adopted by the voters in, I think, 2020, which states that every public commenter has to have at least 3 minutes of public comment. So gives people more opportunity to talk. But again, if you have 100 public commenters, they all get 3 minutes, period. So potentially 300 minutes of public testimony. And then for translation, if somebody requires a translation, they get an additional 3 minutes. So potentially 6 minutes if somebody requires translation. Sometimes you may have double translation. I mean, we've had a situation where, maybe we haven't. So scratch that, but you do require the extra 3 minutes for translation. So potentially 6 minutes for a public comment. Okay, let's go over closed session real quick. You all typically don't have to deal with this, but at a meeting, you may see the council make an announcement before a meeting and say the council is going to go into closed session to discuss this item, that item, that item. You may hear a readout from the city attorney. And you can't go into closed session just because you want to discuss something in secret, right? So these are permissible closed session topics, litigation, and there's a reason behind all this, right? You don't want to be discussing litigation strategy, whether or not to initiate or whatever, openly, right? Real estate negotiations to discuss price and terms on whether we want to sell or purchase a property. Public employment, so if they're discussing something pertaining to an MOU or a union group or something, those things could be discussed in a closed session. That's labor negotiation. So public employment is typically reserved for discussions involving the city attorney or the city manager. Because as you know, the city council is responsible for essentially hiring and firing 2 people in the entire city, and that's the city attorney and the city manager. That's it. Every other employee is either under the city manager or under the city attorney. So they could go into closed session to discuss the public employment of the city attorney or the city manager, grand jury testimony, or for public security purposes. So these are generally our closed session topics where you may see the council go into closed session on those issues. Civil remedies for the Brown Act, there are 2 distinct types. Injunction, basically stop what you're doing, or action to void past acts of a legislative body. That's a pretty big one. As you can imagine, if you have purposefully circumvented the Brown Act and you've approved a multi-million-dollar contract and you're found to have violated the Brown Act in doing so, that could potentially void that past act. As you can imagine, would be a disaster for the city. And then there are criminal penalties for the more like egregious circumstances where you like purposely try to make backroom deals with other members of a legislative body. It has happened in other cities, luckily not here, but it's where a violation of the Brown Act would constitute a misdemeanor, where somebody attends a meeting where the action is in violation of the Brown Act, and you actually have the intent to deprive the public of information which you know or have reason to know they're entitled to have access to under the Brown Act. So those are really egregious circumstances, but they are out there. And we do have a lot of people that monitor our public meetings and do make complaints. I wouldn't say frequently, but it does happen where we have complaints that go to the public, the DA's office, Public Integrity Division, for alleged violations of the Brown Act. And that's it. With that, I will take any questions you might have. Yeah. Oh. however you want to do it.
Okay, does anybody on the floor have any questions? No? Do we have anybody online? Which I asked before. Okay, go ahead.
I know this is focused on the INCO, Crispus and at Blackstock South. When we look at the neighborhood councils, how does that fall into play for the?
Good question. So the neighborhood councils are not subject to the Brown Act. So the neighborhood councils are not considered legislative bodies of the city council. Obviously, you all are chairs of your individual neighborhood councils, and the INCO, as a legislative body created by the council, is subject to the Brown Act. But the individual neighborhood councils are not, which is why you don't post notice, make them open in public. You may have a practice of, obviously, you have your own individual agendas. You might take comment and stuff like that, but you're not governed by the rules of the Brown Act.
Number two, you talked about if you're in a meeting for the INCO, you can only miss 2 meetings?
No. So this is for virtual attendance. So if you choose to participate via Zoom because you have a just cause circumstance or an emergency circumstance, you can participate via Zoom for 2 meetings per year.
So what I'm going at is then, if an individual is a volunteer into the community, what is the ramification of that person if he's volunteering his service or time, if they miss more than 2 do a Zoom?
Yeah, so it's not miss more than 2.
Well, be in a Zoom meeting more than 2 times.
Yeah, it's utilizing then I would say in that circumstance that there could be an allegation that the INCO is knowingly allowing a member to participate in a meeting when they know that they should not. Now, a member maybe they can participate as a member of the public. I mean, you're a very unique body, right? You're not appointed by a member of the council and all that. But my advice would be to not allow somebody to participate electronically or what they used to call it telephonically, but virtually, for more than 2 meetings per year, because those are the rules of the Brown Act. Now, as far as ramifications,
is there being a volunteer? Wouldn't there be such a waiver to put into play?
there's nothing in state law that has that, right? So it basically just says that for an emergency or a just cause circumstance, you can participate virtually, but it caps the number of times that you can do that.
Okay.
Yep.
And let's see here. That was it. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm gonna go first. Just to follow up, there was a discussion at one of the executive board meetings, I think you might recall, it was just before Adam left. I think Samantha was coming on, I'm not sure, I don't remember exactly when, where we discussed that as they could participate as a resident, but they could not vote. Is that, and that was recommended by you, Steve with you?
That would probably, I mean, that would probably be okay, because again, you're making recommendations to a council. I mean, my advice would be, the conservative approach would be to not do that, but certainly if they didn't vote and they were kind of just observing or something like that, I don't know that would be, I'm sorry if that was your question, but yeah, that might be okay.
Flat honest with you why. I'm a retired individual, and if I plan to be gone 3 months, I still want to be involved in the city.
Yeah.
But for somebody to say, you can't do this, I'm a volunteer. I'm trying to help the community. I'm trying to hit the city. How can you do that without going over and saying some sort of waiver in consideration of the individual that's giving their time towards the city?
Yeah, and that would be something that would be a carve-out that would have to be drafted in state law, obviously.
Right.
We just give advice on what the law actually says. It's not, hey, we're gonna give you advice on how to circumvent it or get around it. It's like, that's what state law says, so that's, there's no real consideration in the legislative history for, what you described, retirees, volunteers, et cetera, unfortunately. So it's kind of like we're working with what the government code actually says. I mean, yeah, it's.
And yeah, part of the conversation too was that, as long as we don't vote on that much stuff anyway. We do vote on things, but not that often. But their vote wouldn't count if they're coming as just a resident of Oxnard. So it's kind of like, and I think you guys said it was okay, but if it's not, it's not.
You can probably observe, right? Certainly, if you're having elections or something, you wouldn't, wouldn't want to risk something like that.
No.
But yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. That's I just wanted to
And
clarify.
I mean, the thought behind the Brown Act, that provision of the Brown Act is really geared towards legislative bodies like a city council or something like
Right.
that, right? Where they want to ensure that city council members who are elected by residents aren't just kind of phoning it in and participating virtually from home.
Right.
And so that's really what that's for, unless there's an emergency circumstance or a just cause
Right.
circumstance.
All right, go ahead, Rainey.
Sorry, I'm studying up here. Rainey from Cabrillo. So just for clarification, because it got a little fuzzy on social media and email. So does it matter the number of people in social media and email?
So on email, it does, right? On email, it's got to be a majority of the legislative body
So it
that
still
responds,
stays, okay.
correct? But on social media, that's why I was saying that rule is kind of dumb. It's just basically.
So it's completely separate from
It's completely
everything else.
separate, right? So the email rule is, consider that similar to if you're talking in person, right? If you're let's just take a simple number because this is complicated within 11 members being a quorum, but if you're a 5-member body and 3 of you are communicating on an email, that would be a violation. Under that social media rule, if Roger comments on your post that's within the subject matter jurisdiction, that's it. That's why I was saying it really should be that a majority comment on that post, similar to email, but they treat them differently.
Interesting. Thank you.
Yeah.
Is there anybody else? Okay, Roger.
Councilor raises a great point on social media. I post notices about district meetings, and other chairs will weigh in, so they shouldn't.
Well, if it's about the scheduling of a meeting, the attendance of a meeting, I think that's one thing. But if it's like, I recommend we do this, or I'm in favor of this, and then they like it, respond to it, then you're arguably now,
Well, I
violating
brag
that rule.
about our park restrooms all the time,
Yeah,
and other chairs say, well, how come you get that park restroom? So,
potentially, yes. Potentially that's problematic. Yeah.
all right, so,
That's what I'm saying. It's not the way people actually communicate. It really should be a majority, but that's not what the law says.
so the public has the right to comment on any agenda item,
Yes,
and also items not on the agenda.
correct.
We're all members of the public. We can all attend a meeting virtually if we need to, just not as an INCO member, but as a member of the public.
That's true.
So I can attend virtually but not vote.
That's what the chair, that's what the chair Belsey was saying.
That seems like a slam dunk. Okay, so I don't vote, but I can still comment.
Yeah, but you wouldn't be counted for the attendance of the meeting, I guess.
That's
Again,
true, but
you're-
INCO's been doing real good lately, hitting the quorum all the time.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, the thing is like, I don't, that provision of the Brown Act was not, I mean, it wasn't, this is a very unique, large body of residents, right? That provision was really drafted for, like I said, city councils, right? But it does apply to you as a legislative body. So as you encounter these circumstances.
we are all elected officials in the city of Oxnard. We're elected by 6 people at a meeting, but we're elected.
Well, as you kind of encounter this, if you did want to appear virtually, certainly reach out to Samantha, and on a case-by-case basis, we'll let you know, like, whether it's a good idea or not. But generally, the spirit of that provision of the Brown Act is really like, unless it's a just cause or an emergency circumstance, you cannot participate virtually, or you're limited to the number of times you can participate virtually. So now it becomes a question of what is participation, right? Exactly. If you're participating as a member of the public and you're making a public comment, sure, that's probably okay. But when it comes to voting on an item, obviously you wouldn't be able to do that,
never do
right?
that.
Yeah.
That would be a violation.
Yeah.
Okay, so a couple of exceptions. If a group of INCO members wanted to call for a special meeting,
Okay.
they would have to go beyond the quorum in order to get enough people to sign the petition or, request that. That's like one of the only, loopholes for.
You're scheduling a meeting. I would say that's not discussing, deliberating on an item within your subject matter
So
jurisdiction.
scheduling meetings, okay. And then because we also have elections amongst ourselves, somebody who wants to run for an office on the executive board may want to, lobby their fellow chairs, say, hey, I need your support for this thing. So how's that, that's.
Yeah, that's a tougher one, because I think at that point you're dealing with, if you reach the 11-member threshold, at that point.
Can you look into that?
You're arguably discussing
That
something within
seems
your
like
subject matter
it's one of the
jurisdiction.
exceptions that there should be, because how you gonna lobby, for something like an election,
Yeah,
unless you have the ability to go beyond the quorum rule, because you're
yeah.
not really.
I mean, it's a good point. I just think that, again, that the Brown Act is really not. I would say it's a gray area. But I would say that there is an argument to be made that is an election is within the subject matter jurisdiction of the body, and once you hit that quorum requirement, arguably you go beyond that, you're in violation of the Brown Act.
Okay, so how are we gonna find out about this one particular case?
I can certainly research it, but I'm telling you, the answer, as you can expect from an attorney, is probably going to be, it depends, and here's why, and that's the best that we could do with that scenario. Yep.
Walter Hagen, Oxnard Shores.
But,
We're dealing with the airport all the time, and we want to deal with, let's say, 5 or maybe 10 different chairs, because we're coordinating strategy, basically. Is that a problem?
I don't think so. Okay. I think there you would be coordinating with less than a quorum of the.
Is 11, so if you have more than 11, then that's a problem.
Yeah, that's kind of the magic number, right? If you think you're going to go beyond that, certainly reach out to Samantha, and we'll see whether that would be participating in a discussion of another legislative body that would meet one of the exceptions under the Brown Act.
Okay, so chairs talking amongst each other is not a problem?
Yeah.
If it's not, goes beyond that?
As long as it doesn't reach more than 10.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Is that it,
Anything
everybody?
else?
I don't think so. Thank you so
All
much.
right, no
Thank you.
problem.
Thank you,
All right.
thank you.
Have a good night.
Okay. Item number 2, Parade and Festival Subcommittee update. Rainey, did you have anything to say? Oh, that the INCO general membership receive an update from the Parade and Festival Subcommittee, followed by discussion.
So we do have a theme for the parade, and it is a storybook Christmas. But they still do not have any applications or other data yet released. So we don't know what a fee structure would be or what other limitations they may have. So we're still in a bit of a holding pattern there. But one thing that we do need is we are still looking for that 15 neighborhoods that want to participate. And I think as individuals were reaching out and asking chairs if they would be interested in participating, there may have been some confusion on that. And so just to clarify, we're just asking for general interest in participation. We're not asking for anyone to come out and, I don't know, build an entire float or walk. There's no, how do I want to say this? We're not signing you up for an obligation. We're just finding out if you have interest in participating. And it could be the chair, or it could be anyone in your neighborhood participating. So in order for us to move forward, we do have to hit that 15 neighborhood limit. And so when we do reach out, that's all we're looking for, is interest in participating. We're not having you sign a contract that you're going to do X, Y, and Z. Questions?
Yeah, and may I add, there is some confusion too. Some chairs think that they have to go to their neighborhood council to ask. This is a membership thing, so a chair can make the decision. If they feel comfortable, more comfortable going to their executive board, they can do that, but it's not a requirement that you do that.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be at your neighborhood meeting. Just if you know that Sally Sue loves to do events, maybe she'd want to do it. So yes, you would have an interest in that. Does that make sense?
Does anybody have any questions or comments? Roger, nobody can hear you. Sorry.
You have to be official.
How many neighborhoods have expressed interest so far?
I think we have 6 that are confirmed yes. So we need, I would say we would shoot for at least 10 more.
Yeah, and there's several of them that think that they have to go to their meeting.
Yeah, we have a
first. And
lot
that
of
was a
maybes, but everybody's kind of, yeah, I do feel like it is being presented as more of a burden than it actually is. This is an interest in participating, yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Anything else? That was easy.
Nope. Anybody online? Yeah. Okay, all right. So let's move on. Neighborhood chair reports. Neighborhood chairs may individually report on items of interest or concern to their neighborhoods. The INCO cannot enter into a detailed discussion or take action on any item presented during these reports. Do we have any chair reports?
Walter Hagenham, Oxnard Shores. We had our election meeting last Thursday, and we elected a new board. We were happy to have Supervisor Lopez there, along with Councilman Perillo. Something did come up. We've all been working on the Airport 150 study, and the final draft came out a couple of months ago with the comment period ending on August 19th. Unfortunately, when we were looking at the report, we noticed that one of the major issues was noted, but said that you would see the results of this in an exhibit that wasn't in the report. We met with Supervisor Vianney Lopez a week later on several different matters and brought up that this was a major issue. At our meeting on Thursday, she said that it had been posted. I looked at it, and it did create all kinds of problems. And we're going to ask, our board has agreed to ask the airport authority next week to reopen the public comment period, because there are several issues, including this one, which was quite obvious because it was a major thing that wasn't in the final draft. And so I know there were a lot of people here on the Transportation Committee and other neighbor councils that might be interested in reopening this, and if so, I'd like them to support our effort next Thursday at the Airport Authority. Thank you.
Thank you, Walt. Rainey?
Rainey from Cabrillo. We have our next meeting scheduled for October 29th. We have, I believe, confirmed the city manager that evening, and then also it is our election meeting.
Thank you.
Good evening, Sandy from Rio Lindo. We did have our meeting on September 18th. It was well attended. I'm really glad. And we did have our councilperson star talk, which he always does. So we're very happy with that. We had Jerry Martinez from the CERT program. So he did explain that program, and it sparked some interest. So that was good. We also had Andrew Dixon from the Code Compliance. And, just to narrow it down, many neighbors had questions on what can the Code Compliance really do. So he was great also. So it was great. We're well attended.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Robbie Lucio, Kamala Neighborhood Council. I just want to give an update that we're having our meeting tomorrow. It's going to be an election meeting. Hoping to get election going, offices filled and everything. Then we got a beat coordinator report from one of the members from OPD, Alex Nguyen, city manager, is supposed to be speaking as well. And then we're just doing a needs assessment as well from the members of our community to see where our areas of focus should be. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Brian Landers, Windsor North River Ridge. We had a very successful neighborhood cleanup. I want to thank Rebecca and Sean from the city of Oxnard for organizing and executing seamlessly. It was just a great event. Lots of people came. They were lined up at 8 o'clock. Sean and his team were ready at 7:30, and it went off without a hitch. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, good evening. Paul Schnabel, River Park. Also wanted to thank our community for the neighborhood bulky item cleanup that we did a couple of weeks ago. We had two members of the neighborhood council out there directing traffic during the event, and I don't know if it was really crowded, but it was definitely steady. So we appreciate everybody coming out for that. Our next meeting will be next Wednesday. We have Supervisor Matt Levere and his staff coming to our meeting to discuss issues with the Santa Clara River watershed and other issues of interest to the River Park residents. And we're looking forward to that. Thanks.
Thank you, Paul. John?
John Ike, Bryce County North. Still waiting on confirmation for meeting on, oh, okay, so we got a neighborhood meeting on the 22nd. I'll support an agenda for that meeting. And then we have a neighborhood cleanup on November 8th, Saturday. And there's a new Vallarta store where Ralph's used to be. You guys got to check it out.
Thank you. Thank you. Anybody else on the floor? Okay, anybody up here? Go ahead.
Alfonso Arroyo Rose Bar. We're gonna have a cleanup this weekend, Saturday, October 4th, from 8 to 2.
All right, cool. Chris?
Chris Bissonette, Blackstock South. We did have a meeting on the 18th, but unfortunately we did not meet quorum, so we're having a re-meeting on the 23rd of October, which will start over at the Community Center, South Community Center. And hopefully we'll get an election there and meet the quorum.
Okay. Lisa?
Oh, our meeting for June's was last Thursday.
Talk in your mic.
It was really intimate, but it was really nice. We had Sarah Ahern from recycling there. Bert was there. Of course, our beat officer was there. And it was at Waterside, so that was nice. So our next meeting's October 16th, and we will have our city manager there. And it will be on Zoom this time.
Okay. Orchard Park is going to have their next meeting on October 23rd. Our speaker will be Mayor Pro Tem Teran. And our next neighborhood cleanup is the Saturday after, October 25th, 2025. And that's it. Thank you. Okay, so let's move. If there's anybody else? No? Okay, so hearing nothing, I'm going to move on to item F, report of the Executive Secretary. Madam Secretary?
I have nothing to report this time.
Nothing? Okay, all right. Item G, Executive Board reports. The Executive Board may individually report on items of interest or concern. The INCO cannot enter into detailed discussion or take action on any item presented during these reports. Do you guys have anything? Okay, the only thing that I want to say is the city wants to remind us all of the limit of 5 bulky items in addition to our neighborhood bulky item drop-off days. They do allow for 5 bulky items per year. If you're in a condominium or a multi-use home, there is a cost to that. It's $46.35. But if you're a resident that has the 3 carts, the e-waste, green waste and recycling bins and the trash bins, then that is free one time a year for 5 items. And so I just wanted to bring that out. You might want to just start letting your neighborhoods know that. So they're pushing, that's it for me. So is there anything else? No? Okay, let's move on. Item H, items for future consideration. Members may request that items be placed on future agendas for extended discussion. Anybody have any recommendations? No, not today? And do we have anybody online? No? How about you guys? Do you have any recommendations? I know we have still a list that we're going through, so I think we'll be all right. Yeah. Okay, with that, I'd like to adjourn this meeting and without objection, meeting is adjourned. How you doing, huh?